This is April, and the theme this month is the collapse of false authority, of power outside of ourselves, and the rise of a need to listen to the inner feeling, the inner intuition, the inner knowing. So how you might be experiencing this right now and what you might be noticing in the field or in your own experience in life is all ways that we can lose connection to our feelings and all ways that we can hand our power over to external authorities. And why we're noticing this, we'll say in the collective, is if you look around the collective, you'll really see that there's governments collapsing, we're losing faith and trust in the governments because of the decisions that are being made. There's these papers and information, truths being unveiled, surfacing around abuse of power, of sexual abuse, of all of these collective shadows that are suddenly becoming real and becoming realized and seen. So we are ready for the shadows of the collective to be seen so that we can assimilate, digest, feel how they touch us and process them so that we can alchemize them into something different, into something new. And in this process, there's sort of a disillusionment happening where people are losing faith or losing trust in external authority. And this is actually a good thing because it reveals and it brings up all the places that we hand our power away, where we give our responsibility to these authorities and where we lose a sense of connection to ourselves. So this is really going to highlight where we've said, here, take my power, here, I want you to have control, here, I don't trust myself. It brings up all of the places where we don't really feel and know our inner worth and our value and an inner sense of our connection to our own authority, our own sovereignty, and our own ability to feel. So yeah, what is rising in this will be like mass disillusionment, where people will suddenly feel the outside collapsing and then be left with the feeling of, well, I've been trusting the outside all of this time, and now I feel hollow, afraid, empty, scared of what's happening, kind of confused, disorientated, because there's a real big call to orientate back to your center, back to this central column, to unplug, to go back in and to feel. So this might show up in terms of like anywhere that we may have handed our power away might fall away. So a collapse of a relationship, or in a power dynamic with a relationship, a business partnership collapsing, something feeling misaligned, suddenly the rug gets pulled from under us and we thought we were going in a certain direction and we're not. And I should say something about this. If you've been experiencing for the last years these kind of levels of like suddenly things fall apart, and there's almost like a PTSD involved when we have our reality shattered, and it's because we've been moving from a place of lack or shadow. So it's like a divine redirection, even though it feels pretty horrific because it comes from the seed that we were creating from was not a full conscious place. It was more a place of shadow and lack and trying to prove or trying to get somewhere, or manipulation. So we're kind of used to those experiences of collapse where suddenly our own shadows are revealed and we have to sit with those. And it's a very uncomfortable process because there's a big ego death involved. There's a lot of emotional turmoil and stuff involved. And if you've been the person doing that shadow work this whole time and, over the last years, really getting familiar with these parts and really getting into the space that you're creating from, what you'll notice now is when there's a collapse happening, you'll have almost a PTSD around the previous experience of how bad that felt. Whereas what's actually happening now, if you're more in alignment, what's not aligned is collapsing. So you're actually being divinely protected and divinely redirected towards your highest path. So it's a little bit more like your highest is coming together rather than everything is falling apart. It's more like things are falling away that are misaligned. So I just encourage you to know that you might be dealing with echoes of PTSD where you suddenly feel like, oh, well, why is this happening? Like you miss a flight, or, a business thing doesn't work out, or an event gets canceled, or, something like this. And then you're kind of thinking that you did something wrong, or like there's some shadow that you created this terrible thing to happen from. Whereas actually what transpires over time is you see how that flight caused you to land into a new scenario, or a new date that was aligned to meet a new person. Or you see that you were protected from landing into a place that wasn't going to be good for you, or something like this. Or that something new wanted to come together with a more aligned partnership, that kind of thing. So you'll start to notice that actually your highest is aligning rather than disaster, that everything is collapsing. So this is something to pay attention to. If you are paying more attention, if you are connected to your feelings and assimilating and digesting and absorbing and checking the space that you're creating from, where you're actually more connected to your own sense of sovereignty and to your own intentions, that means that things can fall together rather than fall apart. So you can fall back more into love. You can make sure that you're harmonizing with love. And when we've unearthed a certain amount of ability to calibrate to love inside of ourselves, that becomes a stronger signal. So what you might notice now is actually more is orchestrating in your favor rather than things feeling like they're falling apart. So you kind of then move with this power of love in the center, knowing that this love is the stronger signal rather than the shadows, rather than the lack. And you start to experience then more abundance, more love, more reflections of things coming together, more of these lighter densities of consciousness. So that's a potential that's in the field right now, just to give you like the positive spin as well as the stuff that might be happening from the shadows. So we'll say the shadow stuff that's coming up right now, if we're in a process of learning how to listen to our feelings, that means that we're going to have to face all the places that we've been avoiding listening to those feelings. So how we avoid is by being in the mind too much, by being distracted, by being in soothing, by being in addictive patterning, sometimes spiritually bypassing through practices that look healthy on the outside, like meditation or exercise or yoga, you name it. There's a million different spiritual practices that you can have. But we can actually be approaching those from a place of wanting to control or soothe how we feel versus actually understanding that we're moving more towards a consciousness that we become the practice, that we integrate meditation into our everyday experience, that there is no separate practice that changes your state, that you become the state. So we're being invited into now a becoming of that solid state of consciousness inside of ourselves, that solid state of love. If you imagine a solid state hard drive, we're becoming that solid state love hard drive that has massive bandwidth to be with it all in love. That's where we're moving towards. So what's surfacing is the place where we're avoiding, the place where we're not feeling. And I'm going to give you some gateways in this month because I feel like it's very relevant. If we're moving towards a space of more love, we have to then really understand the gateways that actually anchor love into the field. And something that might collapse or that might surface in this time for you is actually, you might realize that you thought that you were loving yourself, or that you thought that you knew what love was, or that you thought that something was real, where in fact it was a mental idea, an illusion in your mind, an idea of what love looks like or what love is, that starts to unveil itself to you, and you start to then collapse back into the void of I don't love myself. I don't move from a place of love, because you were actually moving from a place of your self-worth being placed outside of you, or love being placed outside of you on conditions based on a certain way of showing up, a certain level of performance, perfection. These are all ego layers that are kind of surfacing to be seen, that you can let go of them, that you can allow the ego layers to dissolve and collapse. So the gateway to love is we need to slow down and listen first. We cannot love if we cannot listen. And actually, this is a really good theme right now, because if you notice that we're in massive war collectively, like war is the consciousness that we have going on right now, which is pretty much the opposite of love. It's a big embodiment of disconnection. That's what war is. It's also a big example of people who are not able to listen to each other, people who are not able to consciously communicate and express, and people who are not in the depth of connection to the meaning and the preciousness of life. They are the people who will go to war from ego. And the ego is the need to be right, the need to be maintaining a position of power. It's also a need to feed the hungry ghost. So this whole war is based on like energy and money and grabbing as much resources as possible. And if you imagine that's an addictive energy that's taking, and that it's never full, it's never going to be enough. This brings us into the greed consciousness, which is massive consciousness of separation. So if you're in that war energy, you're massively disconnected from the source of love. So it's a massive lack of love. And this is the hungry ghost of humanity. That's what the war consciousness is. It will never be enough, and it will never stop until it destroys itself, basically. And it will never be fed. It will never be full, because it's trying to fill itself from false light and from false love. The idea of status and power and energy and more, for me, it's a survival energy. It's a survival instinct. It's not, war doesn't come from a conscious place. It comes from deep subconscious human programs of fear, of lack, of survival. Taking consciousness. An idea of right and wrong, and an idea of sides, and an idea of the enemy, right? The enemy outside. There's only an enemy within, and this is the place that we don't listen to ourselves. So when we're in war and we're in ego, we just have an inability to listen to the other side, because there's this insular, independent, I take care of me and I protect my identity at all costs. And that's why ego deaths are so messy. This is why they cause mass destruction, because anyone who's at war is not feeling what they're doing. If they were feeling it, if they would allow it, it would destroy them, like actually destroy them emotionally. So it's like a big thing to turn back inwards and say, I'm actually going to feel my action. I'm going to feel the hurt that I'm causing you. I'm going to see you as part of me. This is where we're going in terms of unity consciousness. But when you look at the collective and you see war happening, we can kind of think, oh, this is a disaster. We're so in the opposite direction. But actually what is happening is it's all rising. The shadows are coming up and out. They're on display. They're being embodied. They're moving through action, so that we can all take a look at the world stage and be like, hey, is this where we really want to move as a collective? And then the movement is inwards. It's like, okay, if the collective is a reflection of me on some level, where am I in the same energy? Where am I in right or wrong? Where am I holding on to identity? Where am I projecting my unfelt feelings outwards? Where am I afraid? Where am I not wanting to listen to the others? And this comes back to the theme of this month, a return to listening, a return to the intuition, a return to the ability to feel, a reinstating of the inner authority inside of us. A sovereignty wants to come back in terms of ability to slow down and listen and feel. And if we imagine we go back again, I'm going to weave through this one. We're moving towards more love. We are actually birthing more love. This is what's happening. This is like we're experiencing the contractions and the expansions of giving birth to love. And if you imagine, not all births are orgasmic. Some are very painful, messy. There's a lot of fear, so we contract a lot, and then there's a relief and an expansion as you open. This is kind of happening in our field right now, where you might have big emotional swings. So you might feel the new and the old at the same time. You might be in this experience of like one foot in the old and one foot in the new, and kind of feeling the pain of the old trying to grip you, and the fears and all the old realities and the old stories, but also the new consciousness that you have anchored more in you right now. This new ability to feel and move from a space of love. This new ability to actually be in an experience and feel what's happening. That's becoming more anchored, and that signal is becoming stronger. The signal of the truth of who you really are is rising. This is from last month, the rise of the true self. Now we're experiencing what's coming up as we rise into that true self. So this rebirth and this kind of shedding of the old. And in order to be able to feel these two realities, you need to really slow down, stop, listen, and feel. Because you can't, if this is going on, there's this inner turmoil happening, you're between two worlds. If you're not taking time to listen and feel it, you're going to be very fragmented. So things will happen right now to create like a forced pause or a forced rest, a forced slowing down. If you are out of alignment, there will be things that will be put in your path so that you don't move too hastily in one direction, that you don't go too far in a direction that's out of alignment with your highest, that you just walk slightly down that path and then you get stopped. It gets halted. And again, from the past, we think that that's a bad thing, that somehow we're being stopped, but we're actually just being slowed down. So there's going to be like a feeling this month of like two different speeds happening. The speed of the new frequency, which is very fast, and the slowness of the old frequency, which is very dense, and a calibrating happening to that new frequency. And I'm always getting this message from different guides of like, we have to slow down to speed up in order to calibrate to that new frequency that really wants to move and anchor in us. It's a frequency that it oscillates, it moves at a certain speed. We need to be slow enough and present enough to allow that calibration to happen, to click in, and to allow ourselves to catch up to the speed, to allow the body to actually calibrate to the speed of the consciousness that wants to happen. And love is a much higher frequency than the density that we're living through war, through blame, through victim, through powerlessness. These are like shame, guilt, fear. These are all much denser, slower frequencies. So there's a slowness happening and a speed happening at the same time. And the slowing down to feel the old densities is accurate. It's like taking time to slow down, to listen, to feel all the spaces that we've been ignoring and avoiding in ourselves. And this is part of becoming more self-responsible. So in a time where things are falling away, where you've been handing your power away to external authorities, you're being asked to slow down, to listen, to feel, to reinstate that inner authority, ability to listen, ability to feel. An example of where you might hand your power away, even like getting a psychic reading and trusting what they say over how you feel. Trusting a spiritual teacher over how you feel, actually. Trusting somebody else in any way, any kind of teacher, any kind of mentor, trusting a parent, trusting a government, trusting your employer, trusting somebody that isn't based on listening to your feelings. So handing over the power of authority to something outside of yourself. This is being called back. And that includes practices that we're handing our power away to. If our state depends on a certain type of practice, we're off track. If your practice supports you in becoming who you are, it supports you being balanced as a being, that's different. But if your state is dependent, if who you are as a being is dependent on a practice, we're off track. So this is a calling back in of the things that we're using to avoid and to soothe and to numb and to change the state of the feelings. This is about learning how to reinstate the ability to be with the state that lives and resides inside of us. This is about returning the responsibility to be with the home, to be with the whole vessel, to be with the experience that you are experiencing. And all the information in your toroidal field is playing for you the moment that you sit and listen. Why do people struggle to sit and listen so much? Because the moment you slow down and you stop and you feel, you start to hear the inner noise. You start to hear and feel the disharmony. You start to feel the densities that you've been avoiding. You start to feel the shadows that you've been collectively and independently avoiding inside of yourself. And that's uncomfortable. It's not an uncomfortable process. So we really need faith right now, faith in the process. And not blind faith, a real knowing that this is the movement, a real trust that it's okay for you to take time to slow down, to listen, to feel, to stop the hamster wheel, to get off and to actually return back to your sovereignty, to return into listening, and to really feel any kind of lack that's inside of you that is replacing love, that it is playing instead of love. And this might be the place where the revelation comes that you realize that you haven't really been in love. You've been moving from a place of lack. Even your relationship was based on lack, not on love. You start to see and reveal all the places that you don't love yourself, that you've showed up from a place of pain, of lack, of distortion, of fear, versus actually vibrating love. And when you understand and you connect to the power of love, you will see the difference between these two frequencies. Whereas now we're kind of in the moment of realization of where we've been moving from shadow. So it's taking that time to slow down and feel is the decision and the courage and the faith that you create that space to actually give your space to feel where we've been in lack. And that might mean that you find yourself in the void, a little bit lost. These feelings might come back in kind of intermittently, because like I said, there's a view of the new and there's a feeling of the old. So you might find yourself again feeling a little bit lost, but this time there's more ability to be certain and sure of your direction. Kind of an ability more to trust in the space that you are moving towards, and trust even though you don't have all of the clarity and the solution, trust in the direction that you're being called to walk towards. And this slowing down and listening and feeling, this creates the ability to actually love. This actually builds the trust in ourselves to love. And if you imagine, most of us in society have been moving from a place of lack and of not listening, a place of ignorance, a place of blindness, a place of dismissing or denying the feelings. We'll have broken a level of trust in our inner self. So we'll have somehow like damaged our ability to trust ourselves because we've been moving against the flow, against the feeling. And we've just been kind of bred into that condition of don't trust your feelings, of listen to your mind. We've been pulled more into the mind. We've been pulled more, it's kind of interesting, we're pulled more into AI right now. And this is again another external authority that we're handing our power over to. But what's happening is AI is now able to create scenarios that aren't real through like recreating, like AI could make a video of me saying something that I didn't say. And we're now presented with a lot of stuff that looks real, but how are we going to know if that's real or not? If we're relying on external sources to tell us what's real and what's true, we won't have a felt sense of what's true in our body. And we are now being called back home to our body so that we can feel the frequency of truth. And truth is a frequency. When I see an AI video, I don't need somebody to tell me whether that is AI or human, because I can feel the frequency of it. I can feel that there's no soul. I can feel that the AI is different to human consciousness. So there's a feeling related to the truth of the frequency of what I'm engaging with. And that's from a space of me being very tuned in, slow in listening and feeling, and opening all of the senses and all of the intuitive abilities and all of the psychicness and the ability to see beyond the veil of the illusion that's presented on the surface. This is what we're being called back into. And we all have those gifts. We all have the ability to feel and to listen on that level. We just need to take the time, give ourselves permission to unplug, to slow down, and to feel, to be with it all, so that you can really, in that void, in that nothingness, feel and allow capacity for the love to return, for your ability to heal and reveal all of the places that you're in lack and shadow, and to allow the inner authority to return, to allow your sovereignty to return, and to slowly, through empowered action, build back that trust in yourself. So for example, and I've been dealing with this myself in terms of like showing up again and creating again, and from a very new place, there was this kind of resistance that was arising in terms of like me taking action. And when I sat with it, I took time to create space to feel it. I was really seeing like, oh, that resistance comes from me burning myself, me not having boundaries with my work, me, once I start, I don't stop. And I had this phrase of, she's going to extract the most out of us when we start. This is what dropped in. And it's like there's no ability, there's no off switch, right? So we're learning how to give ourselves boundaries, and we're learning how to slow down and listen to what's in our highest and what's in our well-being, that all parts of us are on board, that we're not moving as a fragmented soul anymore, that we're not, it's not our mind running the show, or it's not our ego, it's not our fear. No part of us is being overwritten. And this is learning how to not override any part of your system. And this is a real return to the body, a return to the nervous system, because the nervous system is the place that we feel. It's the place that our foundations are built from. It's the place that our state comes from. So if our nervous system is not balanced and we're all over the place, we're at chaos, our nervous system is going to feel very jacked up. We're not going to be functioning. We're going to be reacting and distracting and avoiding. And like a symptom of that might be anxiety. You know, it might be overwhelm, the overwhelm of the feelings that are not being felt. That anxiety is a surface level energy that's signaling to something deeper not being felt. So it's like bubbles that are arising to the surface that are kind of calling you back down to feel. So that these kind of things can surface to show you, they are signals to call you back in, to slow down, to listen. And a lot of people go to a place of like, when I'm in that space, well, what does feeling feel like? How do I feel? How do I allow my emotions? What do I do with them? Like, what am I supposed to do? And it's very interesting because this is a mind level question. There's nothing to do with the emotions, just allow space for them. They will do their own thing. Your body has its own intelligence to do its own thing. This is the same for healing. Something else that can come in this time, when we're in a place of ignoring our feelings, ignoring our intuition, ignoring what's in our highest alignment, the body will present symptoms to us sometimes to show us where we're out of alignment. So we might suddenly be faced with some physical ailments or some physical symptoms that are signaling, saying, hey, there's something that you need to pay attention to. There's a signal here to slow down, to listen, to feel, to go into the condition and to go into the root of what that signal is trying to show you. Because your body is intelligent and the body holds the wisdom in the physical realm. So we are really being called back to the body to reinstate the trust in listening to the body as the driving force in the physical reality. So when it comes to making your decisions and to choosing steps forward and to choosing a path and to really rebuilding trust, we really have to learn how to listen, to allow the body to lead, to allow the nervous system to lead, to move from a space of well-nourished, well taken care of nervous system, regulated in terms of giving yourself all the basic things that you need on the physical level. So good food, you know, light, sunshine, movement, this kind of stuff, basics, like really basic foundational things. And if we've been building our reality that has been mostly on the mental realm from a space of ignoring the body, we're going to be experiencing many different types of collapse right now. Whether that feels like a mental collapse because of the disillusionment around things falling apart, and you kind of suddenly feel like afraid and lost and fragile. This is like the ego is very fragile, right? So fragility can arise in this time as well. You can start to feel a little bit fragile. And I would say if you are somebody who feels a little bit more strong in this time, a little bit more resilient, that you take care of and you look out for your fragile friends. You don't take responsibility for them, but you actually be there and say, hey, I have more bandwidth right now, I can hold you too. That you don't rob them of their responsibility to feel, but you give them a hand up. You say like, hey, you're part of me, and you've built more stability and more bandwidth to be with everything in love. That's a call for you to show up and serve right now. because there's going to be many people who don't have that solid center. And if you are somebody who's built more of a solid center and that you have more capacity right now, you will have that call to be out in service. You will have that call to lead the next wave. And for me, I'm really noticing that inner fire of what we were talking earlier about, the slowing down and the speeding up frequencies at the same time. I've taken a lot of time over the last 10 or so years to really slow down, to listen, to feel, so that I could allow this really like big recalibration to happen on every different layer of my being. So now I'm starting to feel this like stability and solidness in my system that has come back together. It's no longer fragmented, and I'm able to move from a place of more stable energy, so more bandwidth. And that means that every movement has a lot more potency and a lot more power in it. So it's really in this time, even though you can feel things are moving quickly, and even though you can feel the speed of the energy, you're still actually being very slow and taking a lot of time to listen and feel. You're just more effective in your feeling process now. So things feel like they can move quicker because you're much quicker at catching things. You're much faster at seeing the space that people's energy is coming from, the space that your own energy is coming from. You're much clearer about what it is that you're creating in this world. And this is a real call right now for conscious creation. There's a collective upheaval happening, the war happening, the destruction happening, so that something new can be born from that destruction. And if you have the codes of something new, it's your time. It's your time to show up. It's your time to serve. It's your time to bring those codes powerfully into the field. It's your time to be responsible because you are somebody who's anchored at a deeper level of consciousness in this time, that you lead that next wave of consciousness. So there's a real fire. There's this real like passion, and that would be the horse energy, but it's still stable. It's not like chaotic. There's a feeling of an ability to allow the energy and to not prematurely spill it everywhere. It's kind of like you allow the potency of it to come from you in very specific directed ways, and you're taking time also to very carefully unplug from anything that feels like an energy drain. So this is a much bigger sovereignty on your field. So when you are here in your center, there's an ability to feel all of these places that might be pulling your energy, that might be feeding into different taps of energy, where you may be fragmenting your divine energy, where you might feel that you're allowing some of your divine energy to be sucked somewhere that's non-reciprocal. So in this time, there might be a collapsing of non-reciprocal relationships. There might be a feeling of, well, I can never abandon myself anymore. So that means that reciprocity must be in my field. So I'm not just serving and serving and serving into an empty vessel. I'm not just feeding victim and lack. I'm actually, if I'm going to serve, it's going to come back. It's this amplification energy, and it's not conditional. It's just you being accurate with where you put your energy, because I can plow a ton of my energy into one person who really doesn't want to change. They just want attention, and this is the victim consciousness. Or I can pour all of that energy into creating this video, for example, and helping a collective of people who are really ready to shift, who are ready to take responsibility, who are ready to be in ownership, and who are ready to tune back in, to sit, to feel, to allow, and to allow love to reveal itself in that process, to become love in that process. And we rebuild that self-trust when we allow that process to happen. So we are taking time to allow ourselves to slow down, listen, and feel. And this is where we rebuild the broken trust, where we actually take actions that are based on your well-being and your highest alignment, and that you feel safe enough to say no in the places that you really feel a no, and to really follow your highest desire where you feel a yes, you follow that too. There's going to be a lot more no's and a lot less yeses probably in this process as you unplug, as you take that time to recalibrate, as you get into this center of power, of feeling, of sensory experience, of unplugging from the mind having the reins of control, that you come back to the body and you trust the intuition, you trust the feeling. And like I said earlier, trust and truth are things that you can attune to. So truth is a frequency that you learn how to feel in your body. Your whole being takes in information when you are present enough to listen. And like I said, if we're unplugging from the war consciousness is one that does not listen. We have to learn how to really be present enough to listen. So this is a reinstating of saying, I stay here and I listen and I learn how to feel, and I take responsibility for all the feelings that I have. I witness and allow the emotions and the density that's rolling through me. I take time to untangle myself, to alchemize them, to allow them to be. And then I arise from a space of more clarity, from a space of more resolved energy, where I have more bandwidth to actually show up in love. I allow love to be born through me. And I will just say, like, when I look around, like, how many people are plugged into addiction, into soothing, into coping. This is why I say we're in a crisis of consciousness right now. If we really want to change, we need more of us to unplug, to listen, to feel. We need to really check where we're in avoidance through substances or through soothing patterns, through food, through exercise, through spiritual practices. And you realize that your conscious choice becomes the practice. That you have the ability to choose in each moment what feels aligned, what doesn't feel aligned, what feels alive, what doesn't feel alive, what feels your highest movement, what feels like distraction and avoidance of responsibility, what feels like avoidance of feeling, versus what would be the most responsible, most loving thing to do, and that would be to slow down, to come back, to listen, and to feel. Something that might arise in this time as well is the mapping of the need to be perfect and how that collapses you. So if you're struggling to show up, it can be because you don't want to make a mistake, right? And then you'd rather not show up because the overwhelm of the idea of making a mistake or not being perfect, you kind of feel like not ready, this never ready feeling. I'll never be ready, I'll never be ready, and I'll never be ready. And it's better to show up than to be perfect. It's better to say, to have it done and to take a step towards it than to aim for some false level of perfection that will never happen. And it's kind of like becoming okay with learning as you go and making mistakes and knowing that that's part of the process, that you don't have to maintain a certain level of like, well, I need to be perfect and polished from the get-go. Sorry, I have a lot of geckos in my, a mama gecko just gave birth to baby geckos, so they're flying around the place, frightening the life out of me every day. But anyway, I digress. This need to be perfect will collapse you. So if you have that perfectionism thing, checking if you're always telling yourself a story of, I'll be ready when I do this course, I'll be ready when I know this thing, I'll be ready when I read that book, I'll be ready when the perfect conditions on the outside are perfect enough for me to be perfect to start. And I would encourage you in that to explore the resistance and the avoidance of starting through the need to be perfect, because that will keep you in a forever loop of not good enough, not ready, avoiding responsibility, not creating. And you can actually start to consume content and information and knowledge, and that can feel productive. Like you can go back to school and study another course and like all of these things, because you're filling the void of not good enough, not there, not I need another course, I need another thing, I need to know more, I don't feel ready. Now there's a balance between allowing yourself to sit in containers and explore something that you're really interested in, because it's okay to engage with these things. Of course, they're like beneficial for our learning curves and our process. But if you find that you're studying on an endless loop of doing courses and always feeling like, well, when I learn this modality, I'll be good enough, I'll be ready. And if you have this pattern going on, that's different from just enjoying exploring and then also creating at the same time, and kind of taking what you need from those experiences, finding your power inside in containers, remembering who you are within that container, but not taking the modality as your worth. We're done placing our worth in external modalities. This is going to be a complete collapse of systems that feel misaligned. So if you're misaligned, if you're learning a modality that isn't actually true to your soul, even though it could be same, but different, like a different process around your own genius, you will want in this time to create space for your genius to come forward. And if you hand your power away to a lineage or a modality or some other person's invention or training, you might then start to feel like you're a little bit lost, your essence is lost, your worth is caught up in that other person's creation. And it might be a call back in for you to really feel, well, what is it that I want to create in this time? And in order for us to really have that call back in, we need to be willing to really look at the space that we create from. And this comes back to responsibility for all of our shadows, because we are unconsciously creating until we become conscious of our creation. And then we're looking at like, oh, that's the space that I've been creating from, and feeling the impact of the space of creating from an unconscious space without blame or self-judgment or self-criticism. You kind of then, when you know better and you are more conscious, you can make a choice to create from a more space of benevolence or a space of more reciprocity or a space of more love. And that movement is a very powerful one if you can take your time to really feel the intention behind your creation. And we trick ourselves a lot through stories. Like some people will just be chasing money, but they'll hide it behind a nice idea of a benevolent business. But actually the core of the place that they're creating from is they just want to be rich and famous. And you'll start to see this in this time. We have like Celebrities, false worship in celebrities and gurus, they're all falling into grace, I would say, not from grace, into grace. And there's a flattening of the field. There's a flattening of handing your power over to these entities, to religions, to celebrity as a religion, to image as a religion, this false outside authority that is based on ego, that is based on status, that is based on positioning, that's not based on values, that's not based on humanity, that's not based on benevolence, on love, on collective power of we all rise together. So this collapse and this destruction energy that we're in right now is a real call for us to go return to the ground, return to the body, allow the ashes to settle, and then we rise in new memory. We rise in full memory with new consciousness of what is, with new consciousness of what we want to create. And this is where we get in to take time to feel, to slow down enough to be able to feel the space that we're creating from. So the biggest thing in this feeling process is actually taking the time to stop, to slow down, to not move too hastily, to take time to listen, to feel. And the more you do that, you reinstate that ability to feel the truth. You reinstate that ability to listen to your feelings. You build the trust back inside of yourself. That trust is your gateway to self-love. That is your gateway to becoming love. That is absolutely core. What do we need to build that trust? We need courage to change. We need the decision, the choice to change, and we need the courage to take new action. We need to face the fears. We need to feel them, get uncomfortable and do it anyway. We need to get out of and be willing to, the pain of ignorance needs to become stronger, and the pain of not living your purpose needs to become stronger than the pain of avoiding, than the avoiding of the pain, I should say. So we need to have that movement now where it becomes more painful to avoid yourself than it is to soothe yourself. So you are coming forward with a new purpose. You are allowing purpose to rise through this process, to arise from that void, from that nothingness. And you're getting time to take space to be clear, to become clear about what is it that I truly care about in life? What is propelling me forward? What would I live and die for? What am I doing here? What is this life all about? What do I want? Like these types of questions. And a really good one to ask yourself right now is, where am I? Where is my attention going? What are my actions showing to me? What are my behaviors showing to me? If I say that I care about consciousness and I spend 90% of my day avoiding, do I really care about consciousness? So if I care about consciousness, I need to show up. I need to be conscious. I need to be engaged. I need to be consciously creating. I need to be taking action that says I care about consciousness. So I need to have the courage and the energy and the movement alive inside of myself that I'm going to take care of myself in the process. If as I move, I'm still listening. I'm not moving and then ignoring myself again. I'm still listening as I move. And this is, again, the slowing down to speed up. You start to make very fast frequency movements from this space of very slow, well-felt feelings. And this is what it means to build a solid foundation. And if you imagine what's falling right now is anything that's been built on sand, basically, the house of cards, they're coming down. It's like anything that's been built from an inflation of ego, from a false space, from a space of false worship, from a space of celebrity, of trusting the government. All of this stuff is collapsing. So when you ask yourself the question of, well, where am I in all of this? That brings you back to your power. It brings you back to the present moment, because if you're not being present, you'll notice that you're off in the past thinking about something, or you're off in the future worried about something. You're not actually being here and being empowered and creating and listening and feeling and taking your time to be with what is. You're actually allowing the mind to pull you off into a timeline or a story that's not even anything to do with the present moment. And then your energy gets fragmented across different dimensions. You fragment yourself across this horizontal plane of the past and the future, whereas all your power is in the present. All your power is in the ability for you to be fully here. So when I say, where am I? Are you here? Are you present? Are you here? And this is the teaching of be here now. Ram Dass talks about be here now. In order to be love, we actually have to be here now. We have to create from that space of unified, of fully here, of fully on, of fully alive. And that's not something that just kind of clicks on overnight. It's a slow regathering back of your power. It's a slowly unplugging from everything that has been pulling you away from your center. It's a reclamation and a resounding back to your full frequency, a resounding you, a person that's in unity, in harmony with the one, with the all. We're kind of returning to the ability to bring ourselves back together and put ourselves back together on those levels. So that's what we're being called into right now. Specifically, just paying attention to anywhere that might take you away from that, and to know that it's okay if you feel like your reality is collapsing right now, to also know that it's a divine redirection, even if it feels awful, because ego deaths do feel awful. And honestly, like I mentioned earlier, we have this PTSD around everything. And, you know, if we're like focused on the war, love is the greatest weapon of war. You're not against anything anymore. You're standing up in a new frequency. You're saying, this is the new earth, this is the new frequency, this is my offering to the collective. I'm going to be love. You know, and a space of like, what happens when you start to listen to yourself? If war is not listening to each other and not listening to yourself, when you start to listen to yourself, then the desire for peace and for space and for quietness and for stillness and for oneness and for love becomes much bigger than the need to be right. It's like you're not afraid to be wrong because the ego is no longer in charge. You're not afraid of somebody challenging your reality. This is a time where we need to become okay to be challenged. And if we are somebody that's challenging other people, that we're challenging them based on what we care about, not based on an ego of right or wrong, you need to recognize what you're challenging and if it's stable enough or if it's going to collapse, if it's too fragile. So there's a wisdom in feeling where that challenge is going to actually help to transform something, or if it's going to completely obliterate something. So there's with great power comes great responsibility. And love is a great power, and love doesn't always look nice. In fact, sometimes it's fierce, sometimes it's a challenge, sometimes it's a hey, wake up. Sometimes there's something deeper behind it. Sorry, just needed to get a little drink. We're almost done. Bear with me. Yeah, so just coming back to like being okay to challenge and be challenged, and like having enough strength inside of yourself and courage to stand up in what you care about. And then also the wisdom to know when a challenge will be met, or when somebody's too fragile to meet you in it and it's not going to be helpful or beneficial. So with great power comes great responsibility. And we need to move wisely when we can feel these things and the nuances of them. And this is a time of great nuance, that we're getting into our ability to feel fine details, not just on or off, or not just like black or white. We're actually feeling the details and the intention behind things. So yeah, I would say like the ego is fragile, but the heart is unwavering. So as we calibrate to the heart and we anchor into the heart, the ego has more space to actually dissolve, to become integrated, for that part of you to take a back seat, to no longer need to be driven through a space of fear, because the love becomes stronger. And this is like a tandem process where both things are happening at once. So the old is dissolving, the old illusions, the fear-based realities, the false structures that we've built on false premise, on ego of needing for a certain status or identity. They're all falling away. Excuse me. And that at the same time, we're cultivating an ability to listen and to feel, and space for the heart, the space for the love to come online. So there's this new space, if we slow down and listen and feel, for love to birth, for love to bring its head forward, for love to finally have some space, for love to finally lead. And that's not going to happen if we don't allow, and if we don't give ourselves permission to become vulnerable and to learn how to express through the heart. So there's going to be a process in this time as well of people are really feeling and getting to know what their true expression is. Who am I if I express from a space of truth? And if there's like a letting go of the control and the structures and the rigidity around how we show up, and we're giving ourselves permission just to be who we are, to be full permission to be ourselves fully. And that requires a massive level of deconditioning, unplugging, deprogramming, and returning to trust. Trust that I am enough as I am, trust that I will be received as I am, I trust that I'll never reject myself no matter what, so I'm going to show up. And this is a time to really cultivate that courage and that meaning and that connection to what it is that we care about, so that we can stand up in it, that we can truly say, this is what I live for, this is what I die for, and I stand up in it, this is why I'm here. And that takes its time. It takes its time to get to that point of clarity, of really revealing the seed of who you came here to be. So we're in a time where we can really allow the old to die, allow everything to collapse, and return to inner authority, inner feeling, deep inner listening, and reinstating the wisdom that we have inside of ourselves. So unplugging from anywhere that doesn't encourage us and empower us to listen to and trust ourselves, and then to learn how to listen to others from a space of listening to ourselves. And this is where we learn how to be more in unity, that we move together, that we're not moving as these separate, independent vessels, that we actually realize that I'm a part of you and my movements affect you and your movements affect me, and let's rise together. It's not about one person rising. And that's something else that's worth mentioning, of like the rise of the false light, and the handing your power over to that false light in this time. You're really noticing now where people they're seeking external validation through spiritual practices. They are the guru who wants to be validated. This is performance versus prayer. And you'll get attuned to the difference between somebody who's performing spirituality, somebody's doing it for attention, they're doing it as a show, from a space of disconnect, from a space of unworthiness, actually, from a space of not enoughness. Again, the same stuff that everyone creates from until we don't create from that space. And you start to see what real prayer feels like. So we'll have more people that are rising more with real depth and prayer and humility and connection and reverence and respect and honor for each other, and how they move and walk and talk and how they live is an embodiment of that. And how you'll be able to recognize someone who's in performance is they'll be on a stage performing, and when they come off the stage, they're a totally different person, or they're pretending to be a certain person. There's a level of false smiling, and it's very hard to see. This is like a tricky one to spot sometimes, but when you're deeply tuned to truth, you can feel it in your body. You'll never be tricked by any of these things. So there's a real call into prayer versus performance. There's a real call to prayer that has deep meaning and deep feeling and deep connection. A prayer for a new humanity, a prayer for a new earth, a prayer for something that means so much to you that this is the only thing that you care about. And that's where I feel like we're heading towards in terms of cleaning and purifying our intention. What is the seed that I came here to put into the earth? What do I want to blossom while I'm here? What is my legacy? Not from the ego, not from the great things that I created. What is my legacy? What imprint do I leave? What conscious impact do I have on the field, on the collective, on helping us to remember who we are? What is my real impact in my time here in that? And we're on a finite timeline. We've already set the mission in process. We've already decided what we come here to do. We're just here trying to walk the path of remembering it. And the only way to allow ourselves space to remember that is to slow down, to listen, to feel, to get in tune with, to get back in touch with your higher authority, your only higher authority, your own soul that is both there and here, that is both out of the body and in the body, this divine matrix energy that lives and breathes inside of you once you give space to allow it to take command. So this is about a remembrance of our divinity, a reinstating of our intuition. And this month, there will be a rising of all of those aspects that are floating around it, like the compulsive behaviors, the avoidance patterns, the disconnect, the disillusionment, like all of the lovely shadow stuff that we have to deal with in the process of things collapsing, so that we can redirect and reorientate ourselves back to the truth, back to listening, to reinstate the space and the ability to listen, to feel, to cultivate, and to reinstate the ability to trust ourselves, so that we stop handing our power to outside authorities. We stop believing in and looking up to, and we look back into who we really are. We look back into ourselves and our own wisdom. We reinstate that authority inside of ourselves to know the truth. So I hope this helps you, and please, if you feel free to share anything in the comments about your experience of this energy this month, anything that resonates, any questions that you have. Thank you so much for listening, and may your journey be blessed through the month.